Luffy awakened Gear 6, fighting Loki in Elbaf, and it's not what you expect. Loki wasn't a villain, he was a guardian, a king chosen by the Giants to protect a secret from the Void Century about Joy Boy. The Giants knew what the world government erased from every poneglyph. They knew why Joy Boy failed, and they knew that the power of Nika was incomplete. Loki knew the limits of Gear 5, and when Luffy faced him with everything he had, it wasn't enough, because the sun had two faces, and Joy Boy never accepted the second one. Luffy wasn't going to make the same mistake, and that's when he awakens the face of Gear 5 that Joy Boy never unlocked. Gear 6, the darkness of the sun. Let's begin. Luffy's fist crossed the sky of Elbaf like a white comet. His entire body radiated that absurd glow of Gear 5, the power of the sun god Nika, unleashed without limits. Luffy's laughter echoed between the mountains of the Giants. A punch powerful enough to make an admiral tremble went straight for Loki's face, and Loki stopped it with a single hand. No recoil, no flinching. The shockwave shattered the columns of the Great Hall of Elbaf and uprooted ancient trees from their roots. But the king of the Giants didn't move. He looked down at Luffy with an expression no one expected. There was no hatred in his eyes, only disappointment. Loki spoke, his voice cold and heavy. "Is this all the sun god has to offer? Then the world is already lost." Nobody understood what was happening. Not the Straw Hats, not the Giants watching from the stands of the hall. Because what was about to happen in Elbaf changed everything we knew about Luffy. To understand what happened in that fight, you have to understand who Loki is. Because Loki didn't attack Luffy as an enemy. He challenged him as a guardian. Elbaf wasn't like Alabasta, where Crocodile oppressed an entire country from the shadows. It wasn't like Dressrosa, where Doflamingo controlled people like puppets. It wasn't like Wano, where Kaido ruled through sheer terror. Elbaf was not an oppressed nation. It was the homeland of the proudest warriors in the world, a civilization that had been protecting something for centuries, and Loki was their king, not by force, because the Giants chose him. What most people didn't know is that the Giants guarded a direct connection to the Void Century. Jaguar D. Saul had survived Ohara. Giants lived for 300 years. Their oral tradition preserved what the world government had erased from every accessible poneglyph. Loki didn't need to read the forbidden history. He had heard it from the mouths of his ancestors, and what that history taught him was something no one in this era dared to say out loud. Joy Boy failed, not because he was weak, not because he lacked willpower. He failed because the power of the sun had two faces. The same force that liberated could also devastate. The same flame that illuminated could burn everything to ashes. 800 years ago, something went wrong. The dawn that Joy Boy promised never came. Loki carried that knowledge with him, and when he saw Luffy arrive at Elbaf with the smile of Gear 5, with that unstoppable energy, he didn't celebrate. He saw a boy with the power of a god, but he didn't see someone ready to carry it. That's why he challenged him, not to destroy him, but to force him to show whether he was truly different from Joy Boy. The fight began exactly as everyone expected. Luffy in Gear 5 was a ridiculous force of nature. He turned the ground into rubber. He stretched the air itself. He transformed reality into a playground. It was the same power that defeated Kaido, the same power that shook the five elders. But Loki was not Kaido. Kaido was a tank. He took hits and hit back. Loki was something else entirely, a warrior carrying the legacy of a civilization that knew Nika's power firsthand. He understood how it worked, he knew its limits, and he knew that in its current form, it was incomplete. Loki didn't just resist Luffy's attacks, he read them. Every blow from Gear 5 was chaotic energy, pure fun, pure freedom, with no direction, and Loki punished him for it. He struck Luffy with a force that wasn't just physical, it was intentional. Every impact from the King of the Giants came loaded with a question. Loki demanded through his fists, "What are you fighting for? For fun or to save what remains?" And then something happened that no one had seen in a long time. Luffy started to lose, not all at once, little by little. His Gear 5 began to drain away. The transformations became slower, clumsier. The laughter faded. And in that moment, Luffy felt something he hadn't felt since Marineford. Fear, not the fear of dying, the fear of not being enough. Luffy dropped to his knees. His body was caught halfway, between the white of Nika and his normal skin tone, blood at the corner of his lips, eyes fixed on the ground. Loki stopped. He didn't finish him off. He stood before Luffy like a living mountain, and he said something that changed everything. Loki declared, his voice echoing across Elbaf, "Joy Boy promised a dawn. It never came." He continued, "If you are his heir, show me that the sun you carry inside can do more than just play." His final words landed like a hammer. "Show me it can burn what needs to burn, so the world can be reborn." That phrase was the key that unlocked everything. What happened next was the most impactful transformation ever seen in the entire history of One Piece. Luffy was still on his his knees. Gear 5 had almost completely deactivated, but something began to shift inside him. Because the awakening of the Hito Hito no Mi, model Nika, wasn't just chaos and laughter. It wasn't just a limitless rubber body or the embodiment of absolute freedom. It was the sun. And the sun doesn't only give life, the sun also burns. The sun also consumes. That was the face Luffy had never accepted. Joy Boy was someone joyful, someone who laughed, someone who promised freedom, but he was also someone who failed. His promise to the mermaid princess was never fulfilled. The Void Century ended with the world government's victory. Joy Boy never accepted the other face of his power. He refused to burn what was necessary because all he wanted was to illuminate, and that's why he lost. But Luffy was not going to make the same mistake. He rose to his feet. Slowly, his body began to change. The white skin of Gear 5 darkened progressively. From his feet upward, it turned an intense black, like burning coal. His veins lit up with incandescent orange lines, like lava flowing beneath the surface. His hair, once white and floating, turned jet black and fell downward with weight. The tips glowed red, like embers. His eyes turned completely red. No visible pupils. The smile disappeared. His expression was solemn, focused, almost sad. Dense, dark vapor emanated from his entire body. Wherever he stepped, the stone cracked from the heat. Gear 6, the other face of the sun. If Gear 5 was Joy Boy's laughter, Gear 6 was his restrained tears. If Gear 5 was freedom, Gear 6 was responsibility. It wasn't a power that played with reality. It was a power that burned reality to transform it. The contrast was absolute, from radiant white to incandescent black, veins glowing with volcanic orange, as if inside Luffy there was a compressed sun threatening to explode. His hair falling with weight instead of floating. No more bouncing, no more comic elasticity. Every movement was dense, heavy, final, and the most striking thing was his face. Nika's eternal smile had vanished. What remained was the expression of someone who understood the cost, someone who knew that to bring the dawn, some things had to burn. Luffy walked slowly toward Loki. With every step, the ground cracked and radiated heat. Loki, for the first time, adopted a real combat stance. His eyes opened wide. There was no more disappointment in his gaze. There was recognition, because Luffy had just done what Joy Boy never could. He accepted the totality of what it meant to carry the sun. Luffy had lost Ace. He had watched his crewmates vanish before his eyes at Sabaody. He had reached his limit on every island, but never before had he faced this, that his greatest power had a form that wasn't fun, that wasn't joyful, that hurt to use. Gear 6 wasn't an upgrade of Gear 5. It was its complement. The sun that liberates and the sun that purifies. The fight changed completely. If the first half was chaos versus control, the second half was control versus control. But Luffy's control now burned. Every strike from Gear 6 didn't deform reality like Gear 5. It purified it. Where Gear 5 turned everything into rubber and absurdity, Gear 6 burned away the impurities. What didn't serve a purpose simply vanished. Loki responded with everything he had. The blows between them generated shockwaves felt across all of Elbaf. The giants watching the battle began to kneel, not out of fear, because they recognized something their legends had described for centuries. The moment when the sun stops playing and the real dawn begins. And then came the moment that defined everything. Loki launched his ultimate attack, a blow that concentrated the entire strength of the giant's warrior lineage. Generations of power compressed into a single instant. And Luffy didn't dodge. He didn't deflect. He took it head on, because Gear 6 allowed him to do something Gear 5 never could. Absorb the damage, transform it, and return it, purified. Loki's blow entered Luffy and came out as something different, not destruction. Clarity. An impact that didn't shatter Loki, but transmitted something to him. Conviction. Loki stepped back for the first time in the entire fight. He had an impact mark on his chest that didn't bleed. It glowed with a warm light. And he smiled. Not in mockery, not in defeat. He smiled because he had just seen what he needed to see. The sun that awakened wasn't just reckless fire. It was a dawn that knew the cost of rising. The battle ended without a clear winner in the traditional sense. Loki didn't fall in defeat. Luffy didn't celebrate a victory. What happened was more powerful than that. Loki lowered his guard. He knelt, a colossal giant, kneeling before a small, battered human who could barely stand. Loki spoke, his voice trembling with emotion. Joy Boy promised the dawn and couldn't deliver. He looked up at Luffy and added, "You don't just promise it." His voice swelled with conviction. "You are willing to burn yourself, so it arrives." And with those words, Loki made his pledge. The giants of Elbaf will walk with you. It wasn't a forced alliance. It wasn't a villain turned ally by brute strength. It was a guardian who had done his job. Loki protected the legacy of the giants and the knowledge of the Void Century. He needed to make sure that the person who would carry that knowledge into the world could handle it without breaking. And that was what many didn't understand until that moment. Elbaf wasn't just another island. It was the final gate before Laugh Tale, where the last pieces of the poneglyph came together, where the ultimate alliance was forged. If Luffy hadn't proven he could go beyond the joyful chaos of Gear 5, the giants would have never entrusted him with their part of the story, because that's what Oda built across more than 1,000 chapters. Not a protagonist who wins every fight with raw power. A protagonist who grows, who understands, who accepts every part of what it means to carry a dream as massive as changing the world. Gear 5 was Nika's laughter. Gear 6 was the promise that that laughter would never be hollow. And what happened in Elbaf wasn't just a great arc. It was the arc that redefined what One Piece truly means. So, what do you think about what happened in Elbaf? Did you expect Loki to be this kind of character? Drop it in the comments. I want to read every single one of your reactions. If this video blew your mind, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because what comes after Elbaf is way too big for someone else to tell you. See you in the next video. The dawn has arrived.